again. Re-motherfucking distribution.
You know, I think, and I said it in the piece, I think art is, among other things, it's about change. Or let's say as an artist, you're responding to the change in your life, the change in the art world, the change in the larger world, whether that's economic, technological, social. You can't help but respond in a way. And with this piece, it felt like, you know, as you said, I wanted to make a box that I could put anything in, which I think film does that. I think we have a few mediums that do that. I think the novel does that. Cinema, painting is like that, I think, but it's a little different from these discursive media. But these are forms where you can throw anything at it and try to break it up, and maybe people think you did, but then it just kind of swallows those attempts and keeps going and keeps growing.
Thanks, Nancy. You do the normal slideshow, but decide to videotape it, and then you start tweaking the footage afterwards, editing it.
6 or 7 years. It's chronological.
And you figure there's no reason to ever finish the piece. It could be a box that can stretch to hold anything. And you call it Redistribution.
You know, you start to get an idea about what you're doing as an artist, maybe just a little idea for me anyway, as I move along. And this piece is a way to historicize the medium, myself, the works. And I do think that we're still in the biggest shift from material to immaterial that we've known. We, the big stupid we. But at the same time, it's an old constellation that, well...
Which is maybe why you say you're not so interested in analog versus digital, you're interested in immaterial versus...
Yeah, I think that was kind of a red herring for a lot of people, maybe for years, the idea of the internet, which is like, you know...
What is it?
It's just like embarrassing to even say that, the internet at this point. It's like a kind of a corny word, but to talk about digital versus analog, it's also kind of beside the point. But I think that when those early years that are in those photographs, when I just got to New York, I was thinking about this the other day. There's like do you know this term woodshedding? You know, where people go, so there's this term woodshedding, which is where you are, let's say you're a musician and you want to work up some new songs and you go out to the woodshed, metaphorically speaking, and cycle through a lot of different ideas. It's kind of, you're out of the public eye, right? And then ideally you come out with new energy. And so I got to New York in '97, and that was right when we had all these new magical tools all of a sudden.
For a young artist, at the turn of the century, there's something new. Like those artists 100 years earlier, you must have been thrilled to say goodbye to the novel because there was a new technology, cinema, that would become the language of the 20th century. And now, as you get to New York, around 2000, you get to say goodbye to cinema, the old language. Instead, there's something new, as yet undefined.
So within short order, there was video editing, and all of a sudden then you could burn a CD just of music, which was kind of like another magical tool. And the magical tools kept coming very rapidly. And we have email, but the internet is still essentially just like a browsing medium. But the tools all came, and the woodshedding part was, I realized looking back that people in my generation had these tools, but we didn't have the distribution medium yet. There was no way to share all this stuff. because the bandwidth wasn't there. YouTube was not, there was no YouTube yet. There was no social media. So I was making pieces of work and pouring images and sound and writing and all this stuff into these new tools, but then there wasn't any way to share it. So I was making music. I've been making music for years, but if you wanted to share it, it was like, do you know anybody who's at a record label? And that was it. And maybe you can burn a record and it'll come out in 10 months. So that was woodshedding because I was making all this stuff and there's a good part about it. I was protected from being too exposed. And then, so then in 2003, I started putting my records on MySpace and everything started to fall into place. But there was a weird generational shift there where you had access to the tools, but you didn't have the means of circulation yet. And that hadn't happened before or since.
In this, it seems like your interest from the start has never been in what is absolutely kind of at the bleeding edge of new technology. It's not about kind of technological novelty. It's always about something else, whether it's something that's slightly older or whether it's not about the technology itself, but a relationship to distribution or aesthetics. And I wonder, you're often cited as a very important inspiration for a lot of young artists that are interested in new technologies. And I wonder, what is it about your seeming reluctance to go with the really, really new and always kind of look at the new through some kind of detour? Like, why be interested in plastic, for instance, or these kind of video effects that were kind of already almost on their way out when you started really working with them?
No, I think you're right. I'm not particularly interested in technology for its own sake. It's more, it can answer some questions. With these photographs of human skin from 10 or 11 years ago, I just wanted to make a very high resolution, very large image of human skin. And I just had that picture in my mind, and then it turned out after much research that it needed to involve this like robotic camera and software packages, but that was just a way to get there.
You mentioned before the idea of like the artist talk, the slideshow talk as an important kind of reference point for the form of this. It also strikes me as really in line with a kind of essay tradition in film and video, which more and more now I think of as like very tied to an internet logic of quotation, citation, and of linking very disparate materials together. I wonder if the essay form is something you think of as important for you. You are also a writer of essays, and with this, maybe arguably a maker of a video essay.
Again, it's this box you could put anything into. You can put a home movie, and you can put state propaganda, and you can float a voiceover across it, and then you can cut the sound and put in a pop song. But they're filmmakers who produce and edit those works. It's almost like work from home or something, right? So it's outside the production system, of course, of any major cinema, but also outside of, you barely need a producer for some of those films. So that's maybe why it's also interesting as a forerunner for what anybody can and has made in the last 10 to 15 years, and why that tradition now becomes so interesting. Yeah, I think I wanted to feel free to put any tone in it that I was feeling. And then the trick of it was in the editing. But that the piece could hold, again, anything I wanted to put in there, and then then it becomes the job of the artist to make it work.
So then a tonal shift is fine. And it's almost like, if you are DJing or if you're mixing music for somebody, you can, you wouldn't want to, you think about the pacing of the energy, and it just becomes about transitions. And if you can handle, if every transition is good, then the mix is great, or something like that.
Video today is by taking content and feeding it through a set of effects. And this is true of a cheap TV documentary, zooming slowly into an archival photograph, or a Hollywood movie where footage is treated with color effects, or video art. So I decided to focus on the effects themselves, and I made things that could function like demonstrations of digital video effects or transitions. This one is called holes. The image accumulates as a series of droplets or holes, like paper punch waste. And eventually you can see the image as a composite, and then it drains away again.
If it is made for installation as an art world work of moving image in the art world, where, like this, it's looping and you can walk in and out, then the only thing I really have to worry about is the transitions. If you present it in a cinema and people come in and sit down at the beginning, then you start to think about other things.
And you have presented it in a cinema.
I have, well, yeah, the Metrograph in New York showed it for a theatrical run, which was great. It was kind of like testing it. I loved the idea, and then I realized only after that it was made for this context, and maybe I needed to think about how to make it into more of a beginning, middle, and end work, which I've been trying to do.
Right now, I felt like it really has a beginning and an end. This opening, this conversation with your daughter, moving through all of the printouts, and then this ending, which is very much about the function of art in a way, again, with this, the same stack of printouts. It feels very much like a book ending.
Good. Yeah, I was trying to think about it and make it be able to, I mean, ideally it could function both ways. That's a lot to ask. So I'm not sure if it does yet, but I'm trying to now take it there. Because the work is iterative and keeps going, and I've changed and the world's changed, I have now been able to allow the work to take me down paths. And then you get far away from the original impulse and the original work. And the fact that it still exists in that form somewhere allows me to then kind of throw caution to the winds. And so when I say a box you could put anything into, again, I'm thinking a little bit about these expansive, capacious mediums that we have, like the novel or like cinema. And I just wanted to be able to take advantage of that and have fun with it. And that there was nothing off limits. Then, of course, as the subject, the artist, the one who's putting it together, then of course there are things that are just absurd and stupid or just don't work. But the idea that I could give myself permission to do anything with it, that was kind of a challenge, but also like a luxury or something to be able to set that up for myself.